Thanks, David. We're here tonight to, as Mr. Mitchell said, to walk you through how we got to this point. So as a reminder, throughout this process, we've had two different versions of learning this fall. And this mirrors what pretty much every school in the country is doing, both an in-person as well as an all virtual. We're here today really to talk about that in-person experience along with activities and athletics. In person, remember, could mean that you're fully in person, it could mean a hybrid approach, or it could mean distance learning. And at some point throughout this year, you could go into any one of those three modes. What we're going to talk about today is the collaboration with Johnson County and how that came to be, the gating criteria, both what Johnson County has put out, as well as what the Kansas Board of Education, and that's something new since the last time this board met just a week ago in this very room last Monday. The Kansas Board of Education has put out some gating criteria. And then finally, Mr. Stubblefield is going to give us an update on athletics and activities. So to start with, our collaboration.
Hold on real quick. I just want to confirm everybody can hear virtually.
I don't know. Right.
It's streamed again. No sound.
YouTube is just spinning. I wonder if there's a way to record it and then. Yeah. Well, there's some way still American. Oh. So Lisa says they gave them a different link and that's what.
Trying to figure it out.
So I have a play-by-play over here that they think maybe it's working. And they were gonna test, I'm talking.
We're not hearing, I don't know if everybody's hearing the sound.
You think it's talk? Test, just checking to see if they can hear. It's working?
Oh, you're actually watching it.
It's delayed 10 seconds, but it's working is what I understand. Okay,
Are we 1,000% sure? We good?
yep.
Okay, if staff, if you could triple check, get online, make sure it's working, the 10 seconds delay, we can live with for this one. Okay, does everybody know who's joining us virtually? We paused the meeting real quick, working on some IT things, but I think we're in good shape now. So Dr. Merrigan, please continue.
So can we put the presentation back up, please? Thank you. So I'll start here. What we're here tonight to talk about is the collaboration that we've had with Johnson County, with the health department, as well as with other people in Johnson County. The gating criteria, the gating criteria that was released by Johnson County, as well as in the last week, actually since the last time this Board of Education met, the Kansas Board of Education accepted some gating criteria for the state and put it in its navigating change document. And then finally, the last thing we'll talk about tonight is athletics and activities, and Mr. Stubblefield will come up in a little bit and give us an update. So to start with, the Johnson County collaboration, first of all, has been ongoing since March. Last spring break, the 6 Johnson County superintendents met over with the Johnson County Health Department when we were talking about closing schools and what that would look like. Our school nurses, you may remember, were a part of their emergency helpline, and they continued to work honestly throughout fourth quarter as well as in the summer. They have helped us acquire PPEs for our students and our staff. Blue Valley actually got 11 pallets of PPE materials. They have been our conduit for contact tracing throughout this process. They're a direct line, honestly, even before March, when COVID was just trickling into our community. And then they've helped us with quarantine requirements anytime we had a student or a staff. And then finally, they were a part of a work group with Children's Mercy and some of our nurse coordinators around what music and some other high-risk activities might look like within our schools. Also, so the gating criteria was requested from the Johnson County Health Department by the Johnson County Public School Districts. It was received on July 28th. I should say the reason that we requested that is that we all knew that we were not medical experts. We needed some assistance from those who understood COVID and could assist us in identifying when school would be in session, what that mode of learning should look like. They were received again on July 28th. It was a recommendation rather than a requirement. It involved both school closures as well as athletics and activities recommendations. Our Board of Education met on August 10th, last Monday, here in this actually auditorium, and they made a recommendation at that time. The recommendation for fall opening was scheduled to happen today at a regularly scheduled meeting that the Johnson County superintendents have with the county health department. We have been meeting every couple of weeks with them, and this was just a regularly scheduled meeting. And I'm going to talk about what that recommendation is in just a minute. Many of you may have seen it because it was released as well. This is the criteria that Johnson County released on July 28th, and they have not deviated from that. What was released today was the same. This is what Blue Valley adopted last week. This was the gating criteria that we adopted. We kept the same colors, but we changed the learning modes within it. So today, Johnson County made, again, it's a recommendation. It is up to each local school district to decide how to use it. But their recommendation today was that we should start in the red category. And they gave various statistics in their press release that you could go and look at. But that was the recommendation from the Johnson County Health Department today. So you might wonder, why did we make that recommendation? And to assist in telling that story, I have two colleagues that I'm going to ask to come up, Dr. Chris Jensen and Tara Asher. Tara is our district coordinating nurse. And Dr. Jensen, many of you may know as a Blue Valley Southwest anatomy teacher. However, he has some other credentials that make him a valuable asset to our team. And that was, he is an emergency room physician for many years. He also worked for the Center for Disease Control, and he can tell you a little bit about what that work looked like. So I'm going to ask those two to come up.
Good evening. As Dr. Merrigan mentioned, my background is a little bit odd. I was in emergency medicine for 13 years. I did my residency at Northwestern University, and I practiced emergency medicine and urgent care. And then I subsequently did a fellowship with the Centers for Disease Control. And then also, I'm very proud of the fact that I've taught 9 years at Blue Valley Southwest as a science teacher. And I suppose I'm most proud that I have 2 girls in this district. I've been asked tonight to go back and look chronologically at some of the most important studies that we have been wrestling with for the last 31 days. And I think if there's anything I would hope you take away from this quick discussion is that, wow, have things moved fast in 31 days. And so I'm going to try and shed light on that. One of the most fundamental studies that captured our attention came out on July 17th. If you stare at the date, it says October 2020. No, we didn't go into the future. This was so important that the CDC released it early instead of holding it for their fall journal. And it was actually published outside of the US in South Korea, where the pandemic struck there first. And they very meticulously, scientifically, and thoughtfully looked at about 60,000 people. And they were studying in-home contacts. And what I mean by that is they were looking at folks in a house who had one individual that was COVID positive, and did it spread to the other individuals, and how did it spread? And they were trying to learn about the virus. And what they found was reassuring on July 17th. What they found was that kids who are at a young age, particularly 0 to 9, elementary school, if you want to classify that, as well as pre-K, seem to have the lowest transmission rate, approximately 5.3%. And this obviously was good news. You know, this has been scary times and everyone's nervous, but I think any parent is probably more concerned about their kids than they are themselves. And so clinicians like myself and like Tara and our pediatricians kind of hung their hat on this study, rightfully so. It was well powered, 60,000 some people. And this was reassuring to look at as we were trying to learn about the virus as fast as we possibly could. There are some critiques of this study. No study is perfect. And this is straight from them, obviously. And if you notice, although they captured a large volume of people, in terms of contacts traced between the ages of 0 to 9, there were only 237, which was less than 1% of their entire study. Now, the trend they found was still interesting. Those folks had, in that age group, 0 to 9, the lowest transmission rate, but it was the best data we had at the time. So although a lot of statisticians were nervous that it wasn't a lot of kids, we went with that information kind of as a clinical group because it was the best information we had at that moment. Fast forward to July 30th, roughly 2 weeks later. Up in Chicago, one of the top 100 pediatric research centers in the United States, Lurie Hospital, formerly Children's Memorial, part of the Northwestern University system, did a study that they were looking at COVID and serendipitously found that kids in a younger age when they cultured them with these nasopharyngeal swabs, actually had greater amounts of viral parts in their nasal pharynx than older children and adults. This was an unexpected finding based on the South Korean study, but it, in a way, was not a surprising finding because anyone who's a mom or dad knows as soon as your kiddo gets whatever thing has blessed them to become a snot rocket, the whole house comes down with it soon. And so whether it be RSV or a typical cold, we were used to seeing kids spread viruses this way. So they sent this information out and said, hey, you know, there are some limitations to the study, but we're a little nervous because we're finding greater amounts of virus inside these kiddos' nose and mouth area than we expected to. This is data from their study, and I'm going to try and explain it as best I can. They used a special lab process where once they cultured the virus within the nose, they used a process that would amplify or grow the virus. It's called PCR. And you'll notice that the kids have the lowest bar graph. In this case, that's actually bad. It means that it took less cycles or less growing time for them to get their virus to a certain threshold. And so what that's telling us is that they had a higher quantity of virus than other age groups, including adolescents and over 18. Let's go to August 7th. This is released through the CDC, but actually it came out of the Georgia Department of Health. This was an unfortunate situation in an overnight camp where a lot of participants at the camp really didn't follow the guidelines that the camp had been given. Masks were not worn in an ideal fashion. Social distancing wasn't the best. And cohorts or small groups weren't really followed the way they're supposed to be. And so kind of, if you look at this, what happened was on camp counselors showed up. They'd been there for about 2-3 days. The campers showed up. And I believe it was June 23rd, a counselor left with COVID symptoms, was tested, responsibly contacted the camp. The following day, they began sending kiddos home. And there wasn't much time for exposure, a little more than 48 hours. And bottom line was they were able to test 344 of the almost 600 campers, and 260 were positive. That's an attack rate of 76%. What was particularly concerning was that those in the ages of 6 to 10, kind of like the study in Chicago, actually had the highest transmission rate. Now, I wasn't there. And there's a lot of factors that go into play. Maybe these kids were the least compliant with their masks. Maybe these kids understood social distancing the least. I don't know. And I don't want to pretend to know. But I can tell you that was the data that was thrown out to the world, and it admittedly grabbed people's attention. A few days ago, August 11th, the American Academy of Pediatrics did release that in conjunction with the Children's Hospital Association, that in the last 2 weeks of July, we saw a surge of kiddos contracting COVID, about 97,000. And that's not a surprise to me at all, because kids, rightfully so, my family included, are out and about and doing more. And so I'm not really shocked by this. You know, our kids have been hanging in there all summer. They've been doing the best they can, but deservedly so. They're out and, you know, making responsible choices, but still trying to get out into the world and be a part of it. And so I'm not surprised that we're now seeing higher numbers than when kids were secluded in houses. One good thing that comes out of this is that although there's some data to suggest kids may be transmitting the virus more readily than we thought just 31 days ago. Friends, I'm not Dr. Fauci, but I've never seen anything move this fast in medicine. It is the most humbling thing I've ever seen, and my head is spinning daily. But the one good thing when I look at my 2 girls at home that I do want to share is that hospitalization rates are very low for children. And that does provide me some comfort. And I think if there's one thing that I could summarize all this to the board and to those that are interested in this data as parents is this is the most fluid, evolving situation I've ever seen. And whatever we do in September or November or whatever is probably going to change. And I've never seen something so dynamic. And I think what I would like to get across is I do see people working hard to do the best they can with the decisions at that moment. And we have been working tirelessly in Blue Valley to try and make the best decisions we can at that moment. So with that, I'm going to invite Tara Asher to come up, who's our district nurse coordinator, to share a couple other pertinent thoughts.
As Chris said, I'm Tara Asher. I'm the district nurse coordinator. I oversee.
Tara, you move that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So I oversee all your building nurses in all the schools here in the district. So your school nurses have been working really hard with the Johnson County Health Department. We've also been doing a lot of work with them as far as contact tracing for the community. So they're versed in what's going on with this virus. With that being said, we know there's a lot of concerns out there because we've heard them through the hotline and we've heard them at the district when those have come in. We've heard them at the health department. And with all these concerns that are coming in, we know there's questions. Those are coming from community members, students, parents, and we know all those topics are a lot to take. We know it's a heavy decision that we're here tonight to look at this complicated issue. But it also, with these decisions, comes a great deal of benefit and also a great deal of risk. And so we're looking, Chris and I have been looking at the science that is behind all of this, and we look at what is ideal for our situations. So we look at the situation now and wonder if in-person is the way we need to be, or looking at the science that suggests the other modes of education. We also know that there is benefit to in-school education. And we also know there is risk of bringing a large population of kids together in our schools. And so we want to acknowledge that the fear that people feel is there, especially with our high-risk populations that are out there. But know that we have been working really, really hard with the Johnson County Health Department, our Kansas Department of Health and Environment, the CDC. We have worked with Children's Mercy a great deal this summer to get their involvement in how we move forward. But also know that as the district, there's one thing that we can tell you. We have been taking aggressive measures to help minimize the risk here in the district. Also, we've been putting those mitigation strategies into our buildings gradually. We're looking at what works, what doesn't. We also know that that our parents, we're going to need their help within this to involve our whole community in reducing the risk. And so we need everyone to take a hard look at these mitigation strategies so we can have the best shot at opening our schools for these kiddos. But these mitigation strategies, as we're offering in our buildings, also need to be carried on at school and with our extracurricular activities. And so we know that these strategies to help protect us in our building, this is the only thing that we have to open our buildings before a vaccine comes available. And so our success for our schools, it weighs on this. And so we need to give it our best shot, and we need everybody's involvement so we can go back to school and we can be a part of those extracurricular activities that everybody has come to love about BV. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen and Tara. So the final thing I want to go through before we switch topics is the Kansas Board of Education gating criteria. So when we met as a board last Monday, this was not available. This was accepted by the Board of Education, Kansas Board of Education, on August 12th, which was last week after our meeting, of course. And it's a part of a navigating change document. The navigating change document, for those of you in the audience or online, is an over 1,000-page document that the Kansas Board of Education received in July at their meeting. This was put together by educators from across Kansas and included both operational and educational suggestions for the fall. This gating criteria, which you're going to see in just a minute, was developed by the Kansas Academy of Family Physicians, the Kansas chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, KU School of Medicine in Wichita, the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, the Kansas State Department of Education, and volunteer school leaders from across the state. I was not one of those leaders. I actually did not see it until it came out on social media. Last Tuesday was the first time I saw it, and I think that's when I sent it to our board. These also are recommendations, and the advice is that we work with our local county health office if we use these recommendations. So here are the recommendations. You'll notice that it's similar to Johnson County, but of course it uses different colors, so that could get confusing. But it does look at both on-site, hybrid, or remote. It talks about school activities. It talks about an audience if you have activities, talks about visitor access, playgrounds. That's all interesting. But the real part that was interesting is these 5 different criterias. They start with a building level criteria, which is absenteeism, which of course we don't have right now, but that is something specific that you could do within your building or your district. It looks at some community gating criteria similar to what was in Johnson County. So you'll see the 2-week county % positive case rate, the 2-week cumulative, that is the number of new cases over 100,000 over a prior 2 weeks. It looks at, again, community gating criteria, the trend in county incidents. And then finally, it looks at local referring hospital capacity. So some of that data you can find on the Johnson County Health Department. Some of it you can't, quite honestly. And so we had to do a little math. And also it gives you some suggestions for when you would do full-time and when you would do the hybrid for students in elementary. And so it talks about how you would cohort those students and when you could do that. So that gives you some additional recommendations. So again, this is where we're at today. Attendance data we don't have, obviously, because we haven't started school. That community gating criteria, we're at 11.4%. That would put us in the orange. The community gating criteria, the 2-week cumulative. So I had to go and do a little math. My background is as a math teacher, so I kind of like that. That was 199 per 100,000 over the last 2 weeks. We're steady or stable. I mean, that's what it indicates. And then finally, we made several calls last night and actually found some information today about the hospital capacity, which is currently today at 36.8%. So we're well in the green. So that's where we're at right there with that. I just wanted to make sure that.
So real quick,
Yeah.
and I appreciate the pause of the green for the hospitalizations. What
Correct.
you're showing here right now has 5 gating criterias.
Correct.
And I know my answer is here. Has 5 gating criterias from the state instead of the 1 from the county, correct?
Correct. So this is from the State Board of Education. It was accepted by the Kansas Board of Education.
And all the health experts that you had attached to it.
Right.
That you mentioned. Okay.
These health experts are the ones who put it together. Yeah.
Okay.
And this represents the county.
This represents what? Amy, can you go again?
I just said this represents the county in total, the numbers you've been able to provide.
Yes, this was all off of Johnson County's website, or like I said, when I did the math, at least they had the numbers that I could go back and do the math myself.
Okay. And that first one, I know you're going to get to this later, but that first one in regards to absenteeism, we could make that specific for Blue Valley.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It would be very easy to get that once we're in session because we have it. It tells you to look at your average daily attendance from last year, and we could easily get that. So with that, that's the update on the gating criteria, kind of gets us to where we're at. I'm going to ask Mr. David Stubblefield to come up. David coordinates our high schools as well as works with our athletic directors and activity directors, and he's going to talk to you about K-Shot.
Usually when I get introduced, I hear a lot of applause while cheering. Thank you. I feel much better now. Thank you. I just want to say that in 2007, on this stage, when I was the freshman class sponsor at Blue Valley Northwest High School and biology teacher, PCR, polymerase chain reaction, I did a backflip on this stage. Just wanted to relive that. Thank you. Right.
All right, Stubblefield, keep it pertinent. Sorry, I'm just kidding you.
Appreciate it. So as we all know, this is for some CASHA updates. We understand that the executive board for CASHA on July 28th had a meeting and they voted to start sports and activities on time. In Blue Valley, we started yesterday on time with our sports and activities. That includes tryouts. We also had not only sports, but we had cheer and dance, working out and trying out as well. So in our district. So CASHA came out on July 22nd, and they provided safety guidelines and protocols for our for all of our sports and activities to provide to our coaches and sponsors to implement. But I just want to note that in Blue Valley on May 21st, we provided rubrics and protocols to our coaches and sponsors prior to even seeing CASHA work on anything, because we knew the importance of getting our students into summer conditioning and into workouts at the end of the school year. So with that, we, Mr. Lane Green, who's the former district activities and athletic director, got together with Dr. Jensen, Tara, some athletic directors in our district, and they provided that guidance and those protocols to our coaches and sponsors. Each sport and activity were given those guidelines, and I must say that our coaches and sponsors implemented those protocols with fidelity. If they didn't understand something, they got with us and asked for clarification. We have one of the best medical teams in the state of Kansas working with our coaches and sponsors directly, as well as our athletic directors, to ensure that we are providing as safe of an environment as possible through this. And with that, although there have been some positive cases and contacts within our programs, those folks have worked with us accordingly with a high degree of professionalism, and our athletic directors have worked tirelessly to ensure that they're in contact with myself, the communication as a team with our district COVID team has been amazing, and also with Johnson County Health Department to ensure that whenever we had positive cases within our district during sports and activities, we were able to identify those, quickly isolate athletes, and continue with our summer conditioning programs. So as of today, we only shut down 2 programs for a total of 3 to 5 days from June to today. So to me, that just lets me know the hard work that those folks that are on those front lines that are doing to mitigate the risk for our student athletes. I'll also say that as a former coach, former sponsor, assistant principal, teacher, and now my job as the executive director in Blue Valley, I could not be more proud of those relationships that our coaches and sponsors continue to develop when we first knew that we were not coming back to school. Through Zoom, they were doing Zoom workouts. They were keeping in contact with their athletes, with those folks that are participating in our performing arts. And that was, to me, that's why I became a coach. That's what Blue Valley, that's the standard of Blue Valley in terms of what our coaches and sponsors are asked to do and what they do on a daily basis creating those strong relationships with our students. And I think that's very important to understand and remember. So what's next? We've been looking at alternative season options throughout this process. As of right now, Keisha is aware of the challenges that face Johnson County school districts, and they are going to work with us as we start looking at some of these alternative season options. As of today, I can tell you that they are not ready to release any statement or come out with a schedule as of today. But we continue to be in conversation with them, and we continue to work with the other Johnson County school districts to figure out a way to move forward with a alternative season option if we're not able to have those seasons this fall. I also know that those conversations are being had with the superintendents as well as the district athletic directors and coaches and sponsors throughout Johnson County. That concludes my part of the presentation. If there's any questions from the board, I can take those.
Dr. Merrigan, you want us to start with David or with some questions, or with you, or? Okay. Questions from the board? You want me to start? David, since you're up, obviously you and I have been attached at the hip on a lot of these things, and I've chatted.
Don't tell people that, please.
Yeah. I'm smiling underneath this mask, but I do appreciate you, as you know. Define all the high-risk sports right now. And again, I know these answers. I just want everybody to understand what they are. And
Define what?
All the high-risk sports right now?
Yeah, so as of right now, high-risk sports, according to the National Federation, would be football, would be competitive cheer, would be dance, and would be, and other than sports would include a band.
Band, okay.
And that's just for the fall.
And that would be for the fall.
Okay.
Again, I'm going to talk about high risk a little bit, and I'm not singling out any specific sports, but I know there's a lot of people in here. So if we continued on with fall football, and I know districts are pushing and already, and there's been some announcements today. What does fall football look like, for example? And again, I'm tying it into because, bands are part of it and cheer and things like that.
Yeah.
But
So
what happens, with social distancing, all our rules in regards to capacities and the overall experience, if you will? I'm just kind of planning ahead for some other conversations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So just in regard to the atmosphere that would be at a Friday night football game. So right now, we would most definitely implement a reduced capacity where we would limit the number of fans that would be able to watch a football game. We would probably not have a traditional band in the stands like we normally would. We would limit the people in our press box and media. And basically it would be, probably immediate family and the people that are participating at those competitions.
Okay, so it's different, obviously. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be different.
I'll ask my final question here. Okay, so here I am I'm leaving Drive 5, coaching my Blue Valley Heat, soon to be 9th grade basketball team.
Yes.
On a Thursday.
Yes.
There's 100 kids there. So I'm driving down east on 135th. I look to my left, there's no lights on at our district stadiums because we're not doing high school sports. I look to my right and the soccer complex is packed. Okay. So I got Thomas with me, my boy. So I'm taking him to Blue Valley Rec because he umpires as well. And I go there and it's game on, if you will, as I pass the skateboard park with other folks as well.
Yes.
My point is this, if we have no fall sports and activities, what are all these kids doing in regards to clubs? The reason I'm asking this is for some sort of control, because these kids are going to clubs and they're playing soccer and they're doing other things.
Yeah.
And again, I got a lot of emails about this, but I think this way too. Just talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So first of all, no offense to your amazing coaching abilities with your with your team, with your son's club team.
Thank you.
But I would say, I would much rather have Grant Stubblefield, sophomore, Blue Valley Northwest, playing for Ed Fritz and under Ed Fritz's care, and also the other coaches and sponsors in our district. I would much rather have our students in Blue Valley with our coaches and sponsors in our district than outside of our district participating in whatever club or rec league that might pop up due to us not being able to play.
All right, Board of Education, other questions for David, and then we'll roll into a couple for Tanya, Dr. Merrigan, and Tara, and Dr. Jensen, and then we'll get on with you guys being able to talk to us.
So just real quick on sports and activities, I mean, to keep a balanced approach here. So there are risks with
Sure.
us playing sports, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think anyone up here would say we don't want to play sports and have activities, but ultimately our main goal is to educate
Sure.
kids and keep kids and teachers safe.
Uh-huh.
So what are the risks in your eyes? And just to kind of play the other side a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would leave those medical risks up to our medical professionals to answer.
Yeah, and maybe Dr. Jensen or Tara, maybe you can weigh in a little bit on that. I just want to make sure we're representing both sides.
Before Dr. Jensen gets there, could I ask you a question, David? How many cases have we had in Blue Valley this fall?
So from the time we started summer conditioning, which was late May, early June to now, I think the last numbers I received from Tara were 14 cases.
I don't know if that's good or bad. You can all cheer. I don't know if that's good or bad.
So one,
Dr. Jensen?
real quick before, hey, David, before you is it
Hold on
possible
real
to
quick.
put the slide back up? That's the Johnson County gating criteria. Just for everyone's education, in terms of different, there's a line in here for middle and high school extracurricular activities. And could you clarify when you talk about high risk activities, which you told us were football, competitive cheer, and band?
Yeah.
So if we're in the yellow, hypothetically, those groups could continue with conditioning.
Yeah, they would essentially be limited to conditioning only in the yellow.
But other fall sports or activities that fall outside the high risk area would be able to proceed as a normal year.
They would continue to have competitions, practice as usual, and compete. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mike, could you have other questions?
Yeah, I think Dr.
Yeah, Dr. Jensen.
Yeah,
Dr. Jensen
Yeah.
is going to give the
weigh in on the risk.
risks.
Regarding risk?
Could you
Risk, yeah,
speak closer
you know,
to the
with
microphone?
sports and activities.
Sure. I mean, the reason that those certain activities are considered high risk opposed to others is most likely based on, when you look at the literature and the research, proximity, time of proximity, and then levels of vigorous exercise and exhalation. That has been set for us by the health department at the data that they've looked at. I think it goes without saying, if you look at the nature of COVID, yeah, you know, when you're close to someone and you're sharing the same airspace, they're going to be higher risk. To the point that Mr. Stubblefield made, those risks are likely dependent to the sport, whether there's a Blue Valley coach or a club coach. So I think the data is there, and it's a balancing act, as we talked about earlier, of looking at what are responsible options based on the data we have right now. And I think one thing that I would reiterate is this year is going to ebb and flow like no other year. And we will plan and we will use mitigation strategies, and we will do everything we can to keep the staff and kids that we love safe as we can. But there's no true safe. You know, you are reducing the impact of COVID, and to be honest, you are responding to the community around you.
The NCAA has, I don't know, 60 some out of 100 and some D1 teams who have determined that they're not going to play football. Two of the major Big Five conferences, major five conferences have decided not to. And I'm curious, 3 said yes, 2 said no. I don't know where the Big 12 is. Nebraska, God knows where they are. That was a joke for my Nebraska friends. Do you know anything about the decision-making process that they went through? And if you don't, that's fine too.
No, I mean, I'm a shameless Notre Dame fan. I watch college football close, but no, I don't know what the NCAA has decided on a conference by conference basis. I imagine they're going through the same agony that we are and using risk-benefit assessment.
Other questions from the board in regards to athletics and activity, because I do want to get a few in to talk about, obviously, several other items as well. Nothing else?
Tom, are you looking to
well,
how do you want to
yeah,
do this?
Dr. Merrigan, any other slides? None other? Okay. Questions for Dr. Merrigan, what she presented right now, or any other thoughts on that?
While Dr. Jensen's up, maybe on the criteria that was issued by the Kansas Board of Education and using a 5-metric approach as opposed to 1-metric approach, what are the benefits of that in your eyes?
I think it offers huge benefit personally, because you're looking at a very complex COVID situation, which we tried to present data earlier on how it's going to be evolving. I think that looking at an approach that can be more microed and just a little more specific to Blue Valley, you know, if you talk about the 14-day incidence rate, whether it's possible to look at our zip codes that represent Blue Valley instead of the district at large, the county at large. I think the whole idea of having 5 different perspectives to look at what's going on is superior to 1. I think that hanging our hat simply on the 2-week transmission rate is not as effective as looking at a 5-tiered process of which you could take it as it is, or you could even weight it. Absenteeism, for example, in the KSPE criteria, I think really shows our hand. If kids are not at school, there's a reason why. We need to be asking why. And if that reason is because of COVID, then that really tells you a lot. So to be clear, I do think the 5-angled or the 5-pronged approach from KSPE offers a lot more benefit and accuracy at assessing our community.
Thank you. Dr. Merrigan, you talked earlier about, do you want to say that about your discussion with Johnson County today? Do you want to wait till later, or do we want to?
With my discussion today with
Johnson County, yes.
It was very brief. It was just that the gating criteria was as it was released on July 28th, and that they felt, and there was a news release, I'm assuming it went out now, because I saw it like right at 2:30 or 2 o'clock, and it was going out shortly after that. Basically just said that they believe right now that the rates are high in Johnson County, and that their recommendation was that we start in that red zone.
Okay. Hey, hold on. We will get to the elementaries as well. I do promise you that. So just real quick, because I want to make this clear for everybody. So their recommendations, we start in the red, which means as of now, per our vote last week, and please save this because we are going to talk about it. As of last week, our entire district would start virtually.
No, what we voted on last, oh yes, I'm sorry, you're right. You're correct.
Yeah, our entire district would start virtually. And again, following the Johnson County criteria in the red, every sports and activities would be shut down completely.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, in the red for the county today.
Correct.
Okay. Let me ask you this on that call. Did the county offer any thoughts on their end that they can help with either criteria, understanding the data, helping mitigating some of this risk, or
So
All you at the school district.
a couple of things. They are putting out some questions around the questions and answers around the data. I have not seen that, but they said that was coming out. The other thing that we have pressed them on and that I will continue, and I hope our whole community will continue, is if these transmission rates are high, and if we think schools shouldn't open, I think there's some other things that should happen within our community too. And I just feel strongly that we want schools to open. We are all going to have to work together on that, and I would like to see them put some other mitigating factors in place.
Okay, but as of now, nothing yet with that. Okay,
Not to my knowledge at this point.
okay, thank you. Other questions for Dr. Merrigan?
Dr. Merrigan, while you're still up there, could you talk a little bit about where other districts in Johnson County are, just based off your knowledge right now, kind of how they're moving forward?
So I don't know all of them. I believe Shawnee Mission released their information, and they're going with what they approved earlier, which is in that red area. And I honestly don't know where the other districts are. I can tell you what they passed a couple of weeks ago. I just don't know if they're going to follow that or not. The only one I know that released was Shawnee Mission.
And they're starting virtually, and they postpone activities and sports for several weeks.
Yeah, that's what I read in their press release.
Okay, and then there's 6 districts in Johnson County, the ones that did the gating criteria per our vote last week. It did the same thing as us. We're with including elementary, we're us, Shawnee Mission, and DeSoto. So 3 districts followed it to a T, and then we deviated as of last week.
And then the other 3, Gardner, Spring Hill, and Olathe, followed their original criteria as opposed.
Okay. Again, I'm talking out loud. Keep those thoughts in your mind as we keep talking. Any other questions from board members?
So Dr. Merrigan, tell us about where we'd be today if we were using the State Board of Education's 5 criteria.
What would be the advantage?
Where would we be today? What would
we would be
closed, shut down, active, inactive? Where would we be?
We would be right there. So those are our data points right now. If we weighted them all evenly, and we just said we're going to ignore attendance right now, honestly, I would have to do the math, and we would be right in between that yellow-orange area somewhere. But that again is assuming that they're all weighted equally. And any good teacher knows if you do a rubric like this, not everything is always weighted equally. Some things are more important than others.
Which, if I may,
Yeah.
which brings a question, and I think the question is for Dr. Jensen possibly, or maybe Tara, I'm not sure. Well, 2 questions. I think you said that the more granular data we can get, the more Blue Valley specific data we can get, the more that makes sense. Did I hear that correctly? Okay, and the second question, I mean, we all go through the Johnson County website and the Tableau data. Do you know if that information is available specifically for Blue Valley, or maybe by, I know it's on there by zip code.
Yeah, I'm going to stick my neck out there and say that when you look at the zip code, they have total cases. And what we're looking for, according to this gating criteria, would be over a period of time, not total. I do believe that the health department obviously has that data because they're adding up the totals. And I think we just make the request that could we have it on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So I think that's possible. And then that would make it more applicable to Blue Valley proper. Now, I mean, I caution you, I think there's a lot of value in that, but I also want to point out the obvious that this is a virus that moves through communities. So although I see an advantage of making it as specific to Blue Valley as possible, let's be honest, if there are outbreaks in our proximity, that will impact us. And I think we just need to be mindful.
I have a follow-up, and the follow-up has to do with the weighting or the relative importance of each of them.
Yeah, so my answer to that, and I'm not trying to dodge your question, I do think they should be weighted, but I don't want to give you a thought on the fly. I think you put some people together, maybe some pediatricians from the community, maybe the school board, maybe some parents, maybe some medical staff, and create a thoughtful answer. But I do agree that inherently, in my medical opinion, some of these are more telling than others.
So Dr. Jensen, so back up a second. So did the State Board of Education not apply a weighted formula for us to use?
To my knowledge, no, sir.
So that's something we have to create.
If we wanted to go that route, yes, sir.
And it has not been created.
To the best of my knowledge, I don't think it's been created. And if I'm wrong, I apologize.
Okay.
Anything, Mike, anything else? Great.
Probably.
No, great questions.
probably
I
not,
appreciate it. I know you'll have.
Let me take a look.
No, we'll be talking about this later as well.
Yeah, I would only suggest we talk about the gating. We talked about athletics. We asked questions about gating, and I think we have another topic.
Yeah, we want to talk about it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand the gating. If I heard you correctly, and I'm going to summarize for the board, and you guys correct me if I say something wrong. On the gating, you said between Dr. Merrigan and Dr. Jensen, you said the following. You said we started out with Johnson County gating because that's all we had. And Johnson County gating looked at the percent of positive tests, correct?
Yes,
Across all of Johnson County.
that seems correct, yes.
After we made that decision, KSDE, the Department of Education, came out with different gating criteria in somewhat the same format, but had different and more, I don't want to call them robust, but a different set of metrics, an additional set of metrics to look at. And if I read that correctly, it says community gating criteria. And then the next column says trend in county, whatever. In this case, I'm looking at the second to the bottom, and it says trend in county incidence rate. It seems to me that KSDE may have done that. You correct me if I'm wrong. KSDE may have done that because in much of the state, the county encompasses the entire district.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Western Kansas in particular.
Right, except for the high population centers. The reason I asked the question about zip codes is because if we use county data, it seems to me that we'd be using, this is going to sound awful, but somebody else's data. And what we're interested in is I realize we're a metropolitan area, but I want to make sure that using Blue Valley specific data, assuming we can get it, makes sense.
It makes sense to me because it represents what's going on in our sphere.
Okay.
And the kids that are interacting with each other. So I see value in that. Yes, I'll leave it at that.
So, okay. We're going to discuss all this after.
Yeah, and by the way, those are fantastic questions, Mike. I know we have a lot of doctors and pediatricians in the room who are going to come and talk. So remember Mike's last question. I love your thoughts on that as well, just to give you a heads up. So I appreciate that. Let's talk elementary real quick, obviously.
Wait a second,
You got another question? Okay.
So you said that the local data is the preferred avenue, right?
I think so.
Okay. And that's a new development, correct?
Yes, this gating criteria was not available to us at the last meeting you all had.
And so all that, depending on how we weight it, which is now another big question, right? The issue then is the data could accelerate some sort of shutdown, or it could delay, correct?
That's correct.
And so, not to put you on the spot, but how would you navigate or manage that issue so that it doesn't unduly create a situation that's untenable?
Well, I think like many things, you want to be thoughtful and get people from different angles together and study the possibilities of what would it look like using real raw data at this moment. Hey, what would it look like if we didn't weight anything? What would it look like if we did weight it? Not that you're trying to manipulate statistics, that's a terrible idea, but rather that you're looking at the problem and the solution you're trying to create. That's why I feel like it should be a thoughtful discussion amongst multiple people coming together if you choose to pursue that avenue.
And how long would something like that take? Roughly.
I have no idea. I'm not trying to be glib, but I think in today's world with what's going on, we'd have to do it fast.
Okay.
Thoughtful and fast.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, questions for our team in regard, by the way, Tara Asher, our nurse, 9 months. She's a full-time employee now as we get through this. And the Dr. Jensen has come to the administration team as well to help us navigate through this as well full-time. We announced that 3 or 4 months ago. So we do appreciate all your guys' work. The questions are in regards to some thoughts on elementary.
Actually, Tom, I have a question back to athletics before we switch gears.
You bet.
So, and this is probably for David. I'm curious what the thoughts were about perhaps switching seasons or doing something to delay seasons so that we don't forego the season for our athletes and band and all the other activities. If there's a way to, I know you spoke with other athletic directors, so what's the pulse out there on that idea?
Yeah, so we looked at it as plan B, be prepared, right? And so that's, our thought was, if we could not start or could not have fall sports and activities, that as leaders, as school administrators, we should be prepared to give these kids some type of a season in the spring. Now, we've looked at lots of different models. There are lots of states that have put out models. Again, we've been in conversation with Keisha, and I know that, you know, they're looking at some of those options as well. And so I would say that we would be prepared to submit something to Keisha so that we could participate in spring alternative seasons if we are not able to play in the fall.
Let me ask you,
Dave-
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Hey, David, so just to clarify, when you say we, you're talking about who?
I am talking about, when I say we, I'm talking about the EKL,
Right.
the Eastern Kansas League.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask you this tough question. Keisha says no for us moving our sports to the spring.
Uh-huh.
Do we need Keisha to play? I'm just asking. I'm just asking. EKL, Sunflower League.
Yeah, so
I'm just asking.
so there would probably, we would not have any state sanctions on that. So there wouldn't be a state championship. We would be playing for the competition and for just being able to get out and have our students participate.
Okay. And I know there's insurance and all that as well.
Yeah,
I just want,
we would, from my understanding, that question was asked, and the catastrophic insurance that our district has to cover our student athletes would still be intact.
okay.
So David, what are the other consequences of not following Keisha or telling them to take a hike?
Yeah, so again, we want to be good members of Keisha. However, I think school districts also have to do what's in the best interest of their constituents and their student athletes. And again, all of the state of Kansas is not under these kinds of criteria, and they're not dealing with the challenges that we are facing. So we would have to make those decisions based on what would be best for Blue Valley.
So you raise a good question. So how are our athletic departments and coaches educated or trained to manage or handle the current COVID environment?
I would say from our current guidance that we've received, we have a tremendous partnership with KU Medical. We have a tremendous partnership with Children's Mercy and with Dr. Jensen and with Tara and our COVID team. I would say that we are well prepared to mitigate the risks.
Excuse me, so do you think we're able to do that better than Keisha or anybody else?
Pardon me?
So do you think we're able to mitigate the risk better than anybody else?
I would say that based on what I have seen this summer with our coaches, with our athletic directors, and with the COVID response team that we put together, I would have to answer, again, you know what? I'm not sure what Keisha has put together, so I can't speak directly to their risk mitigation strategies. I would say, are the risks going to be zero? No. But what I would say is I am very confident in the team that we have put together and the implementation of those protocols.
So is there anybody better qualified to mitigate the risk than our coaches?
than our coaches in
Yes.
Blue Valley?
Yes.
I would say if we are looking outside of our coaches and sponsors that we have hired, that have been trained under us, and we are just looking to kind of to Tom's question earlier, if we're looking for club coaches, if we're looking for outside training facilities to work with our student athletes, I would not feel, I would feel much more comfortable with Blue Valley coaches and sponsors.
Like, real quick, Michelle, before I forget, I would also like, and I don't know, I would love from other parents in here, if you're coming up, I would love to know what competitive dance does at this time if sports get shut down, or band I know has been. I want to think about that as well, what their alternatives are also. So any parents who want to speak about that, please do that as well, or inform us, because I want to include them also, or unless David, you know some of it.
Yeah, just to back up just a little bit, we have athletic trainers at all of our practices, right? And at our competitions. And so I can't say that happens outside of education-based athletics, especially in Blue Valley.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have 2 questions / comments. So I think we're 3 weeks exactly to the start of school, pretty much. Is that correct? Am I doing the math right? That's not very far away.
Sure.
And so figuring out a way to stay safe and still give these kids the season that they want, deserve, need,
Right.
et cetera. How quick can we pivot to something like that?
To something like
anything that we can come up with to, I'm just like, it goes back to my question with what other athletic directors are thinking and what you've talked about, if we could do it in the spring or shift it a little bit later, or I don't know. I think, so the way things are looking, I'm afraid that we're going to have to get creative if we want to do something.
Yeah.
But we still need to be creative and extremely safe about it. I agree with you that our kids are in our best hands with people we know we've trained to do the best job.
Yeah.
But that's just a concern. I'm concerned we're running out of time to figure this out, and we need to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I forgot my other comment now. It'll come back in a second. So.
Okay. So do you want me to answer that?
If you can.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'll take an attempt. So I would say we are currently on a path to be ready to play. If that is interrupted by the gating criteria and not being able to begin fall athletics on time, and if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Merrigan, if we started remote in the red currently, we would stay remote for approximately, I've not determined that. I would say if there is an extenuation of remote learning and not being able to play, not be able to participate in sports or activities, I would say around that 3 to 4 week mark, we would need to be thinking about Plan B.
Okay. I did think of my other question. So we're talking about athletics. Band is also considered high risk.
Sure.
And would be part of that season. Have we thought about how we can help them have their experience as well?
Yeah, so the great thing about Blue Valley, again, we have the band directors in this district are amazing.
Agreed.
And they got together and they determined that ways that they could continue with a modified marching season. Safety first. What does that look like to keep kids engaged in that activity in Blue Valley? I would re-engage that group again to look at what opportunities are out there for them, because again, when you're talking about marching and marching competitions, some of those things are out of our control. Some of those events have already been canceled
Right.
by other groups. So it would mean getting that group back together and looking at what we could provide them safely to continue working with our directors.
Okay. I just want to make sure we think of that too.
Absolutely.
Mayor.
Yeah, you may.
Just for those of you who didn't follow it, and Dr. Merrigan, this is news since we came up here. Shawnee Mission has announced they're going full remote with the beginning of school on September 8th, and they have suspended, not canceled, but suspended fall activities. DeSoto has done the same, but didn't mention anything about activities. And I'm just responding to what you said, just so we know. A question about, and there's also a whole lot of chatter
too, Mike.
about moving the high-risk sports to the fall.
Spring.
I'm sorry, to the spring. Could you, I don't know if that's good or bad. I know what you guys think. I'm asking you.
Do you have a thought one way or another? Well, I think the majority of people that are involved in those high-risk sports would prefer a fall season. Now, with that said, if there's not a way to move forward with a fall season, I think it's incumbent upon me and the athletic directors in our district, the coaches in our district, and in our league to have that option available.
Okay.
Again, is that an easy ask? Are there obstacles to moving that to the spring? You bet. But again, if it's in the best interest of our kids to find a way to give them that opportunity, we would work on that.
Let me explain to these guys in the front row. I wasn't not asking your opinion. Please don't. I was looking from an operational perspective, not from a football perspective. So you're all bigger than me. I respect you. Please don't jump me at the end. I wasn't trying to say it's good or bad.
I do love the passion up front. Hey, the bottom line on your we can't figure it out for this fall. We're all in on moving it to the spring with as much effort, insight, thoughts to make that happen, right?
Okay, I'm going to look at my boss because I am all in, 100% looking for a plan B. You bet.
Okay. Shifting to elementary, let's get some elementary questions in because I know a lot of people have comments. Thank you. Board members, I know we have thoughts and questions about this. Comments? Anybody want to lead?
So from an elementary perspective, I know, what the board approved last week would mirror everything, right? And the criteria that is provided here would allow for some differentiation between elementary and middle and high school. And maybe, Dr. Merrigan, this is a question for Tara and Dr. Jensen as well, but, Dr. Jensen, based off what you presented, is it fair to say that elementary going back at hybrid or even in person is still a safe option?
I think as we're all learning about the KSD guidelines, to your point, if you look at the yellow and orange zone, when you actually look at the distribution of how it works, sorry, I don't have the slide in front of me, but long story short, there is a flex option for whether pre-K through 5 is in-person or hybrid. And I think obviously you want to use the metrics to determine that. And if certain things matter more than others, whether it be weighted or not weighted, that would help you make that decision. So you ask a very smart question about, well, where would you start with elementary or how would you work it? And I think we actually use the flexibility of the gating criteria to assist us. If we're shading towards orange, but still technically in yellow, then I think we're more conservative with elementary. If we're clearly in yellow, then, I think there's an advantage to having kids being at schools at that time if the numbers support it, because to be honest, they're in that little bubble instead of getting lots of scattered daycare options, which might actually spread things more. Now, however, and this may be unpopular to say, I don't think you make decisions on an elementary based out of convenience. I think that you look at the data and you look at our kids and or elementary staff at risk. Are we really shading more towards orange, in which case we should flex elementary to hybrid? I think you make those tough decisions based on the 5 points of science in front of you and try to do what's right for the kids and adults in that building.
So Dr. Jensen, real quick question. So that's another element that would need to be developed, right? In terms of where the elementary is, where the high school, is it a hybrid, is it in school?
It's there. They actually do give some guidance.
Okay. And so we believe that that criteria is sufficient?
If you want to jump in, go ahead. But I would say from a medical perspective, assessing some things from 5 different points of interest as opposed to 1 is a better option. Do I think it's sufficient? I think it's better than the current Johnson County model, which looks at 1 data point.
And here's what I would say. I'm not a medical professional. My degree is in education. I was a math teacher. I can plug some numbers in, but you certainly don't want Tanya Merrigan to sit around and say, hey, I think today we should go this, or I think next week we should do this. This is something that the Kansas State Board of Education, again, based on feedback from these medical groups put together, that's why I like it. And it is, I agree, the weighting we could absolutely work on that, because I have some thoughts on that as well, as I'm sure many people do, but it gives you a criteria. And I believe we need some sort of a criteria so that we're not blindly making a decision.
So as it relates to this criteria, obviously there's a weighting element that would have to be put together. So do you believe it would be reasonable to temporarily suspend our current criteria and develop this criteria and come back to the board with a recommendation by Friday?
Probably. I mean, yeah, as Dr. Jensen said, we're in unprecedented times. We have a lot of work to do, so that might be an option. Yes, if that's what the board chooses that they want.
And so this may be a question for Mr. Stubblefield, but so if we were to suspend the current policy, are we comfortable with the coaches and the parents deciding what level of participation in the sports programs that are currently underway between now and then?
I would say based on the guidance that we received from CASA, their return to activities plan and protocols, along with the protocols and actions that we've been doing since early June, that we developed with the aid of our athletic directors, our district nurse, Dr. Jensen, and many others, that we are in a position that we could move forward as you continue to make that determination. Thank you.
Dr. Merrigan, could you, I think the board has received a lot of questions or a lot of comments and questions from elementary parents who have stated the fact that if they chose in person, they're comfortable with their kids going to school. They made that decision. There is a question there. That wasn't just a statement. The question is, could you give us, based off of what you've been hearing from teachers, what are their concerns? I mean, just knowing that with in-person, we've got in-person, hybrid, distance learning. Could you give us kind of the top couple of themes you've heard from teachers in elementary?
So I would say that our teachers are at the same place as our community is. So our community, there are several here, of course, who are very much wanting in-person full-time, ready to take that risk. Our teachers are at that point too. I think there are some that are more concerned. There are some that are more concerned, obviously, and are struggling a little bit with what that would look like. How do you socially distance 24 students? How do you make sure that they wear their masks correctly? All of those different things that we have to do.
But you feel like over the course of the last couple of months, the work that you and the district have done to prepare teachers puts them in a safe place.
I feel like the district has done a lot of work. What I will say though, remember, is teachers have not returned yet. So teachers, our new teachers start later this week. Our returning teachers come back next week. So teachers have not been back in their classrooms yet. And so I don't want to speak for them on what their comfort level is once they get back there. But I would say our teams have put a lot of work together. Our administrators have pretty much worked all summer with different leadership teams in their buildings to put those protocols together. That is true.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick. So Dr. Jensen, and again, I know we got a huge elementary contingent here, and I'll be frank and candid with you. Since our decision last Monday, I've learned a lot, and I appreciate your notes and emails and understand things more, and admit that I, again, learned a tremendous amount from the hundreds of emails and the time that I've spent in the research, and I appreciate where we're coming from as an elementary parent. I really, really mean that. This hybrid work for elementary, and again, I'm just saying to your earlier point, I mean, I'm just thinking a couple of days at Oak Hill, then you're off to the Goddard School for a day, and then you're at grandma's, and then I'm back to my no different than sports thing. A little, everybody's gonna have different thoughts. I mean, just for everything that happens, other people are coming different. I'm just asking, what's your thoughts on the containment, and how do we control that a little bit, or can you control it with the hybrid?
So the first thing is, I personally go back on this all the time. I have 2 girls that are elementary age, and we've selected in-person school. But what I will tell you is that my answer is I don't know, and here's why. We're launching into territory that we just haven't dealt with. The theoretical model of hybrid from an infectious disease standpoint allows you to have less kids in the classroom, more space, and in theory, you spread the virus less. It looks good on paper. I don't know how it's going to play out, and that's as honest as I can be. Now, the reality that you point out is, there's also considerations of, for some families, would hybrid force them to find, daycare in odd ways? And that might expose a child in a family to more people. And that's a possibility. And so to be honest, what keeps me up at night is that. I don't know specifically how it's going to pan. And so I apologize that I can't give you a data-driven answer for that very good question. But it's going to be the reality of our community and what people have available for options versus in class. What I do feel more comfortable about, though, is if this gating criteria from KSD were adopted, although nothing is perfect, it does allow us to look at our Blue Valley community, I think, with more accuracy and more detail, and make better decisions about our school system.
Thank you. Mike Sykes.
This is for Dr. Merrigan. Most of the board has had the opportunity to look more in depth at the KSDE criteria. And if you look at the KSDE criteria for elementary school, it looks a little split. It says you can do in-person or hybrid. And there are certain conditions, I think, that they suggest on the in-person side. Could you review what they are?
Right
there
here.
They are.
Yeah, so.
Would you comment on whether we can do them?
So, right, so they talk about if you're going to be full-time on-site learning for elementary students, that one of these two conditions, the first one I cannot tell you we could do, that we would have class sizes with less than 15 students per class. I would love to tell you we can do that, but I cannot tell you that we can do that. The second one, separate cohorts within classes, and those cohorts would be of less than 15 students, with adequate physical distancing between cohorts and no mixing of groups other than the teachers. So in other words, what that means is if you have 20 second graders or 22 second graders, you have a small cohort of 3 or 4, 6 feet away, you have another 3 or 4, 6 feet away, you have another 3 or 4. That's what that is saying. We likely could do that, but it would not, what people would need to understand is that their students are not all going to be 6 feet apart. That would be the criteria I'd want to make sure everybody knows. But we could do number B or letter B.
So the tough part out if we adopted this in regards to going full-time elementary is meeting that number one.
Well, no, but we could not do A. We would have to do B.
Yeah, and it's an or.
Yeah,
It's an or.
And just one, Dr. Merrigan, if you could please just talk about the benefits of hybrid from a teacher perspective for a moment.
Well, again, smaller groups of students, you can absolutely physically distance. I could absolutely then we could say that we would always have classes of less than 15 at elementary. You could physically distance 6 feet away. Again, it's easier to get them back into the groove of making sure they can wear a mask, making sure they understand they have to wash their hands every hour, figuring out those things. But that would be the main things.
Okay. Questions from board members?
I have a comment. You know, our goal is our kids. I mean, that's ultimately the goal, but we have other stakeholders too. And we can't run a school if teachers and custodians and nurses, et cetera, get sick. I'm not saying that I don't know that that's where we're going, but it's a possibility considering the fact that we don't have a very robust sub pool, I'm assuming, considering, I don't know, I probably wouldn't sign up to sub this year. So I'm concerned about being able to staff and have the capability to run a school regardless of whether or not. That's just an operational point, right? And then there's the point of we don't want anyone to get sick. We don't know. I mean, you just told us, Dr. Jensen, that children under age 9 actually have higher viral loads in their nasopharynx, right? So, and that's all new. That's come to us in the past 10 days, that information. So that scares me. I'm just being honest. That scares me. And that's what I don't sleep at night over. I don't know how to balance that. I don't know how to fix that, but I just think we need to keep that. This is not, you know, I want my kid in school too, but it's not just me. It's everyone. This is a community and we need everybody to work hard to be able to have school in any shape or form.
We would need students to be safe, but we need staff to be safe as well. That's
yes, 100%.
And Dr. Merrigan, real quick, there's a possibility that, you know, this gating criteria represents something that we could use for the whole district. But my son goes to Overland Trail. It's possible that his classroom could have to quarantine. It's possible that his school could have to quarantine. So although this criteria doesn't get into that, the district is developing, you know, plans to follow for that.
That would absolutely could happen. We've seen that happen already across the country as schools reopen, that an entire classroom could be quarantined, a school could be quarantined or shut down for a little while. But what we're talking about here is what we would do district-wide. And then, yes, Amy would absolutely have to be ready that something could happen specifically within your school. Because if it was just, if we started school and it was just one school that had an outbreak, we certainly wouldn't want to shut the whole place down.
Quick question, Dr. Merrigan. So I know in the past, you've talked a little bit about looking into childcare options for staff. Where are we at with that right now?
We're still exploring options with the Y and to what that might look like for our staff. We don't have anything definitive at this point.
Your thoughts on special education? We've received numerous emails from parents of special education needs from a lot from elementary, yeah, and obviously from secondary schools as well.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that, and then some passionate parents in regards to their kids need to be in person for that elementary age, and obviously everybody, but your thoughts on how we do special education?
So again, we agree. I guarantee you our special ed teams would agree in many cases. And so those will be IEP teams decisions. And so those students may come on a different schedule. We would have to develop that as an IEP team and decide what it is that they need to implement the IEP.
Okay.
So to clarify,
Yeah.
if we are in remote mode and we have children on an IEP that require higher services that probably are not going to be very effective via Zoom, perhaps we would bring them in small.
We would be able to do that. Now, last year, remember, we were shut down.
Right.
We were told we were
different.
shut down. We have not been told we're shut down at this point.
Right.
So we could be on a remote situation and say, we need to bring in these groups of students. Could be reading intervention students, could be ESOL students, could be special education students.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the board? Okay, guess what? We get to quit talking and hear from you guys. Don't applause. Come on. All right. I got to read a quick statement and then we're going to get to our remarks from you. Welcome to those who are here to address the board or listen during open forum. Open forum provides a time for individuals to address the board. In an effort to ensure orderly, efficient, effective, and dignified meeting, open forum will be provided for up to 90 minutes. After 90 minutes, the board will close open forum and will proceed with its agenda items for the evening. Whether you plan or speak or just listen, we're glad you're here because we care about the opinions and concerns of our patrons. If you'd like to address the board, we've completed the form. If you have not completed a form, you can still do it out here and at the greeting table. This person will help you make ensure we receive the request up here, and I'll make sure I'll get to you. If you do not have an opportunity to address the board during the meeting, you may address the board by email communication. I have a few reminders about open forum that will help our speakers to have a constructive and positive experience when discussing items with the board. When making remarks, please be civil and use respectful language. Please keep your face coverings in place while you speak. Please limit discussion to the gating criteria as this is the relevant business of the board tonight. Discussion of matters related to specific student or employee is not allowed. Instead, comments should be submitted in writing to our superintendent. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and avoid repeating the concerns of a previous speaker. I know that's hard to do. There'll obviously be some latitude there. The 3 minutes, I understand. I'm not going to hold gospel on that as well. If you have questions that require response, know that someone will follow up with you at a later time, which we'll continue to do. On behalf of the board, I welcome you and appreciate your interest in Blue Valley as we strive to provide the very best education possible to our students. When your name is called, please proceed to the podium, share with us your name and address, school your children attend, and if you represent any group or organization. I'm going to call you up the first person, and then I'll have the second person on deck ready to go with the other microphone because we have a good stack here, and I really, really want to hear from everybody. Does that sound good? Okay. Oh, we got more? Awesome. Thank you. Michelle Mitchell, you're up first. No relation. That's not my mother I referred to earlier. Was that a bad comment? Might have been. Okay. JD Reese. JD Reese, you're up on deck over here.
Okay, my name is Michelle Mitchell. I am a parent of a freshman and a junior at Blue Valley Northwest, 11305 West 140th Place, 66221. First two things that came up earlier, talking about moving seasons, you have to realize that if you're playing varsity at 6A level, you're involved in club sports, and there are so many cascading effects with moving seasons with all the other club sports we're signed up for. So please get parents involved before we start moving seasons. The second thing is I applied for and received my emergency substitute credentials this week, and I'm here to help as well as a stay-at-home mom. So, but I have some comments I want to make, and I am here representing a 3-sport freshman athlete and a 2-sport junior athlete, and I have been collaborating with parents of girls basketball, girls volleyball, and boys and girls soccer over the past several weeks. And my point is pretty simple. We as parents are not asking you as the district leadership and the board to decide how risky or if it's too risky for our kids to participate in sports and activities. We are asking you to give us the choice to look at the risk. Okay. Okay. So we're asking you to give us the choice and let us evaluate the risks and do what's best for our families. I have seen firsthand what this has done to teenagers in our community. It is not good. They're kind of the forgotten ones because they have just been in this like trance of when are we going to get started again? What's going on? And there was a laser focus on mental health in our Southern Johnson County community and in this district up until the pandemic took over. There's so much to the total student experience. I mean, even at freshman orientation for parents, the one key takeaway was get your kid involved, get the kid connected. And we as parents are in the best position to decide if the medical risks and the COVID risks outweigh the mental health and all the other side effects that our children are experiencing. Another side topic is that we are just widening this gap between the haves and the have-nots. It is so expensive, $85 for 1 hour of club volleyball private court time this summer. Families can't afford that. And I hate to see families with kids that are physically active that need this to get through their day because they've been active their whole lives to all of a sudden not have anywhere to go after school. Then what? They go hang out with their friends at the mall. They get into other kinds of trouble with discretionary time. These kids are used to physical activity or being busy or being leaders and being involved in activities. And if we don't allow parents to give them that opportunity to opt in, where do we have left for them? So we're not asking you as a board to say, hey, it's too risky to play sports. We're saying, put it back on us as parents. We'll decide. Okay. All sports and activities are 100% optional. You guys already gave us the decision on whether or not we want to send our kids to school. I'm not saying don't let us do anything. Just give us a choice like you did for whether or not we want in-person or regular. Let us opt in to sports and activity programming.
Thank you, Michelle. JD, you're up. Is it Jim McFayberger? Am I close? I'm not close, am I? All right, you're on deck, my friend.
Okay, okay? My name is JD Reese. I've got 2 kids that go to West. One's a senior, one's gonna be a sophomore. Live at 9612 West 149th Street here in OP. So as I look at the gating criteria that you presented, one thing strikes me, and maybe it doesn't for the rest of you or the crowd, but it does to me. It is one-dimensional. It only focuses on cases, right? And we have to look at the overall well-being of our children, not just do they test positive or not. We have to look at, well, first of all, hospitalizations in Johnson County. The age group of teachers is typically 40 and under nationwide. Our children, 18 and under. How many hospitalizations have we had of kids for that age group in Johnson County? How many deaths have we had? That's not talked about. Only talked about is cases. What about teen and child suicide rates in Johnson County? We're not talking about that. Child abuse. Teachers look for child abuse in kids. If they don't go to school, that's not addressed. Depression, hunger, all things that we're going to miss if we don't have kids back in school. Also, there's no, I'm not trying to be facetious, there's no parent misery index. And I say that because parents have to juggle work and having kids at school and making sure the kids are taken care of. And we're not considering that in the overall factor as well. And I think we touched on this, but mental health, social and emotional health, where is that in the gating criteria? How much harm are we doing to our kids, right? CDC just came out and said 25% increase in young people considering suicide or have attempted suicide. That's a huge increase from years past. This is having an effect on our kids mentally, and we're not addressing that. We're only looking at the physical, and we're only looking at cases. And so my question is on the cases, if everybody in this room tested positive or every kid tested positive, and it's not resulting in anybody being hospitalized are dying, then what does that mean? I know you say it's not political, but there is a component to this, and we want to make sure that we're looking at over everything, not just cases. Okay, and I won't get into some of this as far as if you look at some of the states that have opened back up, Georgia, Alabama, they've gone to school. They aren't wearing masks, by the way, and you're not seeing a bunch of kids being hospitalized or dying there. And so if you start looking at the criteria and basically all the data and science, I know that our health department mentions data and science about every other word out of their breath. But where is all the data and science other than cases? So I guess just to kind of sum up, this is not magically going to go away. It's not going to go away tomorrow. And if you look at the flu, the seasonal flu, it's actually more deadly to people under 65 in age than this is. So why haven't we in years past gone to all these measures for the flu? I mean, it would make more sense, right? Especially for children, school-age children, but we don't. What is the end game? Where does it end? I mean, this thing, again, is not going to go away tomorrow. So where do we stop? We've got to teach our children. To your point, we don't need, and this is not directed at the board, this is a more general comment. We don't need a nanny state. We're all educated. We can make decisions for our kids. I don't think any of us are going to send our kids into something we think is dangerous or harmful to them. At least I wouldn't, for sure. So you have to look at all the criteria when you're making a decision. And then lastly, and again, this was a comment made. I'm not directing any person, but it said, we can't let anybody get sick. I'm not really sure where that bar came from, because if you go throughout history, people have gotten sick. I mean, they get the flu, they get the common cold. If there's not a high mortality rate associated with any disease, I mean, if you want a high mortality rate, look at the Spanish flu. That had a high mortality rate and it attacked young, healthy people. This is not. So protect the vulnerable, but don't penalize our children for not being able to go to school. Thank you.
JD, thank you. Jim, you're up. Dr. Christine White, you're on deck.
Thank you, Tom. I'm Jim Muehlberger, 14101 Knight Street. Our son is a junior here at Blue Valley Northwest. I want to first thank you for your service and the opportunity to be heard today. I think it's very important that you get our feedback as well. We're very interested in this. We've been following it very closely, certainly in the last few days. I'm going to focus primarily on allowing fall sports and activities to open up and go forward at Blue Valley Northwest in the Blue Valley District. My son has been playing sports all summer long, as well as his friends. I'm sitting next to parents whose kids have played baseball all summer long. We've got kids who played football all summer long. Everyone's done it safely. They've worn masks, they've taken temperature checks, they've social distanced, they're using their own water bottles. They're using all the guidelines that are in the 5-page Kansas High School Athletic Department guidelines for football considerations. And if people haven't read this, you should. We don't need to make any of this up. It's already in writing and it's available for us. In addition to this, we have 3 pages that the coaches from the EKL League put together for guidelines and social distancing. Everything we've been talking about: masks, social distancing, temperature checks. You don't play if you've got a high temperature. And we've had no problems. All summer long, we have had no problems. So I can tell you here in Overland Park, we're not South Korea and we're not China. By the way, I've been to Korea, and it's much different than Overland Park, Kansas. In Korea, there's high density people living in small spaces. You've got 4 and 5 people in a single room. To compare what's happening in Korea and China with Overland Park, with all due respect, should at least be pointed out that there are differences in those studies. And in fact, if we're talking about being fair and balanced, we've heard, so far, we've only heard studies that have talked about, the risk with transmission. Let me tell you about an article that came out just 3 weeks ago. The title is "Children Rarely Transmit COVID-19," and it's published by the Journal of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, University of Vermont. So there are conflicting studies. There's just not one side of the story here. And I think all those considerations need to be taken into account. We've been talking for nearly 2 hours about the Johnson County gatekeeping requirements. Am I correct that those gatekeeping requirements are based on the testing of symptomatic adults? Correct? All right, I haven't heard that said. If true, and I believe it is based on everything I've read and heard, then we are allowing symptomatic or sick 70-year-olds to determine whether these 17-year-olds should be allowed to go outside the city. I'm not going to tell you that the Johnson County gating criteria based on sick adults only is the wrong population and the wrong metrics to apply to healthy high school students. I think you already know that. But you may say it's the only data we've got, so we've got to go with it. Respectfully, it's not the only data you have. You have a summer's worth of data from all over this country of people playing football, softball, baseball, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And there have been no widespread outbreaks. There have been no real problems. There's been positive tests of asymptomatic kids. But with social distancing, with masks, with the safety precautions that are in these 8 pages of guidelines that we've already had, we can participate safely in these activities. And in fact, my son has participated safely for 2 months in these activities. And so are the kids of many of the families sitting out here. So we have firsthand experience that in Overland Park, these safety measures and precautions are working. Now, I know the board's worried about 2 things. You're worried about safety and you're worried about liability. Well, we've talked about safety. And if the primary concern with, for instance, let me talk about football, is that these players are going to go out and contract COVID and then bring it back to the classroom and perhaps infect teachers and co-students. Well, I just heard today Johnson County saying we're going to have remote learning this fall. If there is no in-classroom classes, if it's remote learning, then that risk goes away, right? If you're going to not have in-class, if it's going to be remote learning, then there's the risk about football players, for instance, going out and getting sick and bringing back into the classroom and infecting teachers, that goes away. So that ought to argue in favor of allowing outside activities such as football if we're not going to have in-class classes.
Hey, Jim, I'm going to have you wind it down. Just a couple more comments, and I apologize for pronouncing your last name correctly as well, because I know you.
I do it myself.
Yeah, just
no worries.
A little more.
So last thing, liability. All of the participants in outside activities can and will sign COVID-19 waivers to waive any liability for any risk or harm that they incur. So that protects the district and the schools. In addition, just 2 weeks ago, the Kansas legislature passed the COVID Liability Protection Act. It's now been signed by the governor. So that also provides immunity in civil actions for COVID-19 claims for school districts who are acting responsibly and engaging in social distancing and all the guidelines and precautions we've been talking about. So I would ask you, let these kids out of the basement, let them go play.
Thank you, Jim. Dr. White, you're up. On deck, Eric Dickey.
Hi, my name is Christine White. I'm a pediatrician at Johnson County Pediatrics up by Shawnee Mission Medical Center. I've been in pediatric practice for 23 years. I have 2 children that have graduated from Blue Valley Northwest, and I have 1 junior and 1 sophomore still at Northwest. My address is on file. We are in the midst of a novel virus, and our country has been gripped by irrational and unreasonable fears. This virus is deadly to those over the age of 70 and to a very small extent to younger adults. This virus is no more deadly to children than influenza. To date, coronavirus has killed 76 American children ages 0 to 18. In the previous 4 flu seasons, there has been an average death rate in US children ages 0 to 18 of 157 deaths per year. And yet we don't close schools every flu season. Just for comparison, in 2017, 6,200 children ages 15 to 24 committed suicide, making it the second leading cause of death in this age group. The gating criteria proposed by the Johnson County Health Department may look reasonable at first glance, but on closer inspection, a significant problem comes to light. The data is obtained from a skewed sample. The vast majority of people being tested across the state either have symptoms concerning for COVID or have had a known exposure. This is not representative of the county's population as a whole. To get that data, you would need to randomly swab 1,000 to 2,000 county residents per day. People would include those that are symptomatic, those with exposures, but also a group that has no known risk factors for infection. This would give you a better picture of the actual infection rate for the county. Just as an example, I get an email about every week from Shawnee Mission Medical Center describing their testing rates and positives and negatives. Over the last 3 months, they have tested people who are coming in for procedures, surgeries, et cetera. They've tested about 7,500 people. They were asymptomatic, pre-op patients. The positivity rate was 0.5%. To compare that to 700 symptomatic patients that came in through their ER with a positivity rate of 13%. So you can see that this is just a small sample, but it's representative of what is probably truly going on in our county. The way the Johnson County Health Department gating numbers are now, we have the infection rate for people who are already at much greater risk for infection. So to make decisions about whether schools should be allowed to occur in person based on prejudiced data is, I believe, unethical. Why? Why do I use such a powerful word to describe these decisions? Because keeping children out of the classroom this year, we will be creating another pandemic for our kids. A pandemic of anxiety, depression, increased substance abuse, increased physical abuse, and increased suicides. Children must be in school. They must be allowed the opportunity to learn. The majority cannot do it on a Zoom call. They must be allowed to be with their peers and their teachers in person. There is already mounting evidence of these mental health problems increasing. Drug abuse has increased in children dramatically. Suicides are up in kids. Suicidal thoughts are surging. Child abuse is up in the ER. The director of the CDC, as stated earlier, said that we are already seeing more deaths from suicides and drug overdoses in children than we are from COVID. The original goal of the lockdown, which I agreed with initially, was to flatten the curve, give physicians the chance to learn about the virus, to find the best treatments, and give hospitals a chance to ramp up ICU bed capacity. Well, mission accomplished. The current argument by the Johnson County Health Department is that the number of cases is still going up. Well, that is not a surprise. We have a virus that none of us have encountered before. Of course, our cases are going up. That's expected. That's okay. But it's not the data point to focus on. If you look at the county's data, the hospitalization rate is actually dropping over the last 2 weeks, and the death rate is dropping as well. There are plenty of ICU beds and surge beds available in our area hospitals to treat the small percentage of people who will need that level of care. These are the data points to focus on. In Kansas, there have been no deaths in children under the age of 18. And there have been only 2 deaths in the ages from 18 to 24. In Johnson County, 91% of all deaths are in those over the age of 70 years. In Johnson County, only 3.2% of all deaths are in the age range of 18 to 44 years. Again, no deaths under the age of 18. So when the board decides the right thing to do for our children this year, don't be swayed by biased data, looking at primarily symptomatic and exposed populations. Look at the data about how the virus affects children. It is safe for children to be in school. It is ethical and moral for children to be allowed to attend school if their families chose that option. The science backs this up and the data backs this up. Please do the right thing and the brave thing and allow them to stay in school so we don't see an epidemic of mental health issues and suicides, and most importantly, so our children can learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White. Is Eric Dickey here? Okay, Katie Penrose. And then Stephanie Breer, you're on deck. And thank you for listening to my question on the dance thing. I appreciate that.
My name is Katie Penrose. I am a teacher in the Olathe School District, and my husband is a principal in Turner. Our children attend Blue Valley schools. Our oldest just graduated this past spring, having spent her entire education in the district. Our 4th grader and 2nd grader have attended Oak Hill since they began in the Peer Model program. Oak Hill is their home away from home, and we've always felt so fortunate to be a part of the community. Currently, we are in the process of disenrolling our children from their beloved neighborhood school in order to enroll them in the Olathe School District, who approved following the JCHD criteria without any modifications. We do not do this out of spite. We do this because we have no other reasonable choice. And while I certainly do not feel fortunate, we understand how truly lucky we are to have this option. So many other dual working and single parent families currently have no options available to them. And in opening up a hybrid model at the elementary level, you have now added your own Blue Valley teachers with elementary kids to this list. I wonder if the board considered the position you have put them in, the same people you want to provide your children with a safe and engaging educational environment, now have little, if any, options in providing that for their own. When the board made this decision, they cited parental convenience as their greatest reason. Frankly, I was shocked. The parental convenience in managing 2 separate building schedules, one that involves remembering that elementary students go every day, while secondary students go 2 days per week or remain remote, took precedence to the thousands of elementary kids with working parents. One board member shared that she understood and remembered how challenging finding childcare can be, but that this was the safest option. With all due respect, I would like to remind the board that no one in this room has experienced finding full-time elementary age educational services in the midst of a pandemic before this year. This isn't daycare. The services needed for elementary kids in a virtual education program will go far beyond what many childcare facilities are equipped to provide. Even if this suddenly became available, it is likely cost prohibitive for many families. However, if this were the only safe option, I think we could all come together to make it work, but it isn't. While hybrid does lower in-person numbers in the classroom, it does not lessen teacher exposure. Elementary teachers with 20 students will still be exposed to 20 students. Furthermore, of those 20 students, many will have attended childcare facilities, grandparents' homes, neighborhood school pods, etc., on their days out of school. This only serves to bring further exposure to their peers and teachers. A professor of epidemiology at Harvard School of Public Health warns that hybrid models are probably among the worst models that we could be putting forward if our goal is to stop the virus getting into schools. This is why the original gating criteria does not include a hybrid model at the elementary level. Let's be clear, we all know the absolute best way to reduce any spread is for children to remain at home, socially distancing with a parent all week, but that isn't feasible. The second safest scenario for elementary children is to attend school in their isolated cohorts, with the same peers every day, especially given the safety and cleaning protocols schools have planned for that child care facilities don't have access to. While I have no doubt that the modifications to the Johnson County Health Department gating criteria were made with good intentions, they were not shared with Blue Valley stakeholders to gauge the repercussions decisions would have for working families, teachers, and students. I urge you to reconsider the approval of these modifications. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Katie. Stephanie, you're up, and then Elizabeth Quinley, you're on deck.
Hi, good evening. My name is Stephanie Briere. I'm at 157th and Knoll. I have 4 kids in Blue Valley, but I was asked specifically to talk about the high school dance team, per Tom's mention. So I have a high school dancer as well as a basketball player, track star, and our team, Blue Valley Tigerettes, along with Blue Valley West dance team, came back March 9th from nationals, which we were very thankful that we were allowed to do that this year. No one got sick. We had over 100 different dance teams from all across the nation down there in one tight space. We were distanced as a team away. People weren't behind stage together. They were very good about that. Fast forward, we just had a successful summer conditioning clinic and tryouts. Our studio dance, because you were talking about club sports, club soccer versus high school soccer. We have had studio dance since May. Those girls have been in there, spaced out, staying in one studio, wearing masks, not an issue whatsoever. They also had competitive studio competitions. They made it work. They decided to have one studio at a time come in, do their performance. Then they all left. They sanitized. The next studio came in. They made it work. When you're looking at it, you can even look at the Blue Valley Tigerette Instagram page. They just showed we made camp happen all last weekend, socially spaced, outside. We have an entire field that we can dance in. So a high risk makes me kind of, raise my eyebrows at that. If you look, let's see, they've been dancing and cheering in masks. Our dance team coach has made it her #1 priority to protect her team. Those are her girls, and she'll do anything for them. Along with Mr. Stubblefield, I appreciate your comments on this. We have an amazing extended athletic team working with KU and everything else that's going to watch these kids and make them good. So I say, let them dance, let them cheer, let them play football. It means the world to these athletes to dance and cheer for their school. And I completely disagree that it is not a high risk sport. It is something that has been done and proven to be done, socially distanced, spaced, and they can in fact wear a mask when dancing. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Elizabeth, Shelley Rollator on deck.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Quint, and please reconsider the elementary exception to the Johnson County Health Department recommendations. Keeping elementary students home instead of sending them as opposed to the county recommendations and the Kansas State Board of Education recommendations. There are major differences between elementary and middle and high school students. Elementary students cannot be left alone. For those board members that no longer have elementary students, here are some reminders of what life is with a kindergartner. They can't be trusted to cross the street. They don't know how to read. 2 + 4 is a challenging math problem. And they now have separation anxiety because they haven't been dropped off at preschool for the past 5 months. The Kansas Board of Education has released their recommendations since the Blue Valley Board met last week. Please reconsider the recommendation, reconsider the amendment to the Johnson County and allow elementary schools to open in the red zone as the Kansas Board of Education and the Johnson County Health Department recommend.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Shelley, and then Megan Huffman, you are up next.
Hi, my name is Shelley Rollator. I live at 5112 West 158th Street in Overland Park. I have 3 children at Sunrise Point Elementary, 2 who are incoming kindergartners and 1 who is going to be a 3rd grader. My husband and I work full-time. Our daughter receives special services through the school. This year, we have chosen the in-person option. Obviously, given my situation, you can understand that I am anxious to have my children in school. Online learning is difficult for everyone involved. My emotions this year have been all over the place. And I do believe that children learn best in person, especially at the younger age. That being said, I believe that it's vitally important to keep our students and teachers safe. I support the measures taken to protect our students and staff, even though it may be an inconvenience to me and my family. You are a board of education, and education needs to be the priority here. Taking measures to prevent the spread of COVID is necessary to increase our chance of even having in-person classes for our students. The majority of people polled support the return to the classroom with safety restrictions. Everyone is talking about children, but we also must be mindful that schools don't work without teachers and staff. I want to thank the Board of Education for your work during this difficult time. You are in a tough position trying to make difficult choices for the entire district. Clearly, there's no path forward that is going to make everyone happy. Regardless of the final decision, I would ask our patrons to be respectful of the monumental task the district is facing during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. All right, Megan, and then up next, Molly Baumgartner.
Good evening. My name is Megan Huffman. I'm the parent of two Blue Valley students, first and third grade. We're at 19240 Hadley Street, and my children attend Wolf Springs. I'm also the owner of two childcare facilities in the Kansas City Metro, and we're providing care for around 200 students in total. We have had one exposure in our 3-year-old room. We quarantined that room, and they have since returned with 0 outbreak. In March, when the governor closed all schools, childcare facilities were told, "You're essential, you're heroes," and practically begged to stay open. Most did open as we knew the healthcare workers could not do what needed to be done if they were at home caring for their children. We were not staffed, equipped, or in any way prepared to keep school agers for the next 6 months, but we figured it out. We did not close. We did not get a break, and we don't have 11 pallets of PPE. We simply cared for and educated children as their worlds were thrown upside down. I have not heard one significant news story of an outbreak in our communities linked to childcare. If childcare facilities can successfully educate for months on end without months to prepare and on a razor-thin budget, I simply do not understand why the Blue Valley School District cannot make a reasonable plan in which our children can be both safe and educated. The fact of the matter is that most homes do not have the luxury of a stay-at-home parent, and even fewer have a parent at home who is themselves an educator. Most households either make up of 2 working parents or a working single parent. This change forces them to utilize childcare or to leave their 5 to 10-year-old children at home alone while the parents work to provide for their family. And childcare is not free. This is a significant expense in a family's budget at a time when layoffs, furloughs, and salary cuts are becoming a norm. I spent yesterday calling the child care centers of Overland Park. Of the 20 centers with which I spoke, 10 of them provide school-age care. Of those 10, 6 of them were willing or able to provide care for students in a hybrid program, which means that 70% of the centers in our area do not provide the type of care that a hybrid plan would demand. This also means that parents are likely to pay for a full-time spot. Since all students would be on site on Wednesdays, that eliminates the possibility of child A taking spots Monday and Tuesday, and child B taking the same spots on Thursday and Friday. Because all children would be in attendance on Wednesday, the center would be over ratio and understaffed. When I explained to my fellow directors why it was that I was polling them, here are a few of the responses I received. "We're just trying to meet the ever-changing regulations of KDHE. We can't begin to take on school-age care too." They tell us, "You're essential, but we don't get any additional support. It took us 3 months to get any kind of assistance from the state." "We are fully equipped to fully educate K through 5 if fully educate means teaching them how to play foosball." Leaders of districts need to speak to child care directors who have been open this whole time. They need to hear from teachers who have been working every day in masks, making changes to sensory play, cohorting classrooms. We've been doing it. It's possible. Someone is going to get sick, but you do what needs to be done and move along. You wonder, how will we survive when children are in the building? Ask childcare providers because we've been doing it every day without the resources of a school district. And the final quote, we cannot provide school-age care with the level of instability. We cannot plan around indecision. All of the leaders of these centers are concerned about cross-contamination effect of having students in a district building with one group of students for 2 days and in their building with a different group of students for 3 days each week. Should a positive case occur in one of these students, not only would the district classroom students be forced into quarantine, but also the students in the childcare facility. Therefore, my center and many others have instituted policies. We will not be enrolling students who are in a hybrid learning plan. It simply is not worth the additional exposure risk that we would incur. In fact, when I polled the Overland Park facilities, only 30% of them would even consider it. And most of those programs do not have a solid plan or anything close to it as of yesterday. For all of the parents who know the pain of trying to get a 6-year-old to focus on a Zoom call, picture having 10 or 20 students on different calls, working on different subjects at different schedules, and trying to help them focus on learning. Anyone who has taken the most basic of neuropsychology classes knows that young children simply will not learn in this environment. There is simply too much stimuli. The National Association for the Education of Young Children has released statistics regarding the state of childcare in our nation, and it is bleak. 86% of childcare programs are serving fewer children than before the pandemic, and 96% have higher costs. The childcare industry runs on razor-thin budgets, paying teachers less than half of what district teachers make. Yet we are being asked to facilitate education for just as many students in multiple grades from multiple districts and on multiple online platforms in a time when costs are up and income is down. NACE states that 4.5 million childcare slots may be lost due to COVID in our nation, and 47% of childcare facilities state they would not financially make it through more than 2 weeks of closure. That means if half the nation's childcare facilities have more than one exposure, their doors will permanently close. I believe that leaders should only ask of their staff what they are willing to do themselves. This is exactly what I am here today to ask. The childcare community has shown that with precautions, it is possible to care for children, keep them safe, healthy, and educate them, and we're asking that you do the same.
Thank you, Megan. Molly, you're up. Ethan Hunt, you're following her.
Thank you very much. I am Molly Baumgardner. I am a state senator of the 37th district. I live at 29467 Masters Court. And I am here because I represent 8 school districts, one of which is Blue Valley. I also have had the privilege to serve as the chair of the Senate Education Committee. So to me, all children, all students in the state of Kansas are a part of my responsibility. I want to start by thanking the board and the administration of the Blue Valley School District for having this very transparent special meeting. I urge the board and the administration of Blue Valley to demand of the county health department that they provide you with that same level of transparency, that they provide you with accurate data, the data points that are representative of the students and the employees within the Blue Valley School District. Make sure that they are providing you with the contact tracing that's appropriate and that is fitting with the Blue Valley School District. For the 18 years that I served as a Board of Trustee at Johnson County Community College, for the 6 years that I've served as a state senator, I have always been an advocate of local control. And I have to say that it is tonight, it is the outpouring of support from parents, from students, from taxpayers. That's exactly why I do support local control, because you are here as elected officials to serve and to respond to your constituents, and they are here to share their message. We did hear from board member sides about 2 school districts in the county, but I want to share with you about a decision that was made by 2 school districts that are in my Senate district. Gardner Edgerton School Board met last night. Parents attended and provided feedback. Their vote was that school will start on September 8th. For middle school and high school kids, it will be virtual, but for pre-K through 4th grade, it will be in person. So they responded to the needs and to the parents and the faculty of their school district. In Lewisburg School District, the district where I taught for 7 years, they listened again to their community, to their faculty, to their administrators, and today they started K through 12 in person for all. I do want to address one last issue because it hasn't been addressed so far. I know that Kansas Association of School Boards has published for several days now conversation and concerns that school boards, that faculty members, that parents have expressed that school funding would be cut this year by the legislature. 3 years ago, the Senate president tried to make a 10% cut in school funding. I want you to know that 3 years ago, I fought against my Senate president, and that did not occur. When the legislature returns in January, we will be 7 months into the fiscal year. I want to assure you that I will be fighting to make sure that there will be no cuts to our schools, for our students, for our faculty members, for administration, because our future is right here. It's our kids. So I want you to have that assurance that there are no intentions to cut school funding, because now is not the time. Right now, you need to know that legislators have your backs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Molly, and appreciate your comments in regards to the funding as well. We're a little bit over a half hour, so we've got a little less than an hour left. I'm just stating that because I want to try to get to as many of these as we can, if you will. Okay. Casey Codd, you're up next after Ethan, our first student to talk, so have at it.
Before I begin, I'd like to ask the crowd to please hold their applause till the end. I've got a lot of things in here I know you're gonna like. I would like, I would like for everyone to get the chance to speak in the manner the board's given us. My name is Ethan Hahn. I live at 9104 West 131st Terrace, 6213 Overland Park, Kansas. I'm speaking on behalf of Blue Valley Northwest Soccer, BVSD Athletics, and all the Blue Valley School District fall student athletes. I'm a rising senior this year and have been part of the soccer program for 4 years. While I am speaking here today regarding why high school fall sports is a necessity to Blue Valley student athletes and in our community. To start, high school sports and sports in general are the cornerstone and foundation for some students' soul, will, and purpose to go to school and receive a high school education, and might be the only reason that they seek education beyond the Blue Valley School District boundaries. Through sports, student athletes can learn lifelong valuable lessons, create everlasting relationships with teammates, and develop a competitive spirit through hard work, determination, and a drive to succeed. Alongside all these coaches, trainers, and mentors that have sacrificed their own time for our betterment as a human being more than an athlete. If fall sports are canceled, not only will hundreds of student athletes lose out on the opportunity to earn an athletic scholarship, but it will have a massive impact on the mental health of student athletes and will create an emotional trauma that will resonate not only through the classroom, but through our community, especially for our seniors who would not be able to get that last chance to step onto the field, and that would be extremely devastating. The Johnson County gating criteria for school recommendations is only based off the percentage of the number of people being tested and is not being looked at as a whole. We feel that inaccurately describes the state at which our county is in and falsely jeopardizes our season, and a season that we've worked really hard for. Now, I know there was questions earlier about district-specific data, and I think I might have an answer to that. We have approximately 1,600 kids per high school, and we have 5 high schools in our district. Now, through that, we have about 25% of our high school students are involved in a fall activity. About 400, that's about 400 kids times 2 items. We got 2,000 kids in high school fall activities this fall. According to the exact for that Mr. earlier, Stubblefield said earlier, that 14 students during the summer was tested positive for COVID-19. That if we take 14 divided by the student athletes we're going to have this fall, it's 0.077 for a positive test rate. We come with a request to play fall sports. The Light History Action volunteer those who feel safe, they have the option to opt out. Those who have decided to participate, that the student athlete of Blue Valley follow health and safety precautions, mask socially distance signing, and capacity guidelines for the sports that we allow. According to the Johnson County COVID-19 zero deaths for residents under the age. We see multiple deaths that are community that are unaffiliated with Blue Valley School District, practicing things every single day. We will do whatever it takes to get out there and join that. And it is hard work years and years have occurred that represent officials or represent schools study sports and activity are reality. Let us do everything we do possible. You can be responsible and just give us a chance to start. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Well done. Thank you. Well done. Appreciate your email as well. You guys drop it. Get that now. Okay. I'll let them settle down. Okay, you're on deck. You're on deck, but okay. Okay.
Administrative problems for department checks for this information. The committee expects the party to approve the approved the ICA and the CDC ultimately more consistent administrative perspective such as the government responsibility consistent. Major change that has occurred on real daily
David Stroll, you're opposite David Strickland next.
Great. Great. So we got to get it going.
The light feeds off. The light feeds off. Here. Need confirmation. I'm seeing it here. No, I'm seeing it here. Blind feed.
This is not as well as what I was like to do. I'll be able to do all this and give you a little bit of what the range we take.
Not going for clear indication from the whole kid staff and the role in here.
Yeah. Bottom line is it's the volleyball club. They're waiting, they're engaged. Yeah. My club, really, they are willing, the highest league on the high school, whether it's all days, high league, popular league, or hey, Southwest school, young school, they're planning on something if we don't get to the gym. That's just the way
Appreciate that.